Alright guys, so today we're revisiting an old video, the common misfires on a BMW E46. As you know, E46, other than M3, is all 6-cylinder cars. Unless it's diesel, Euro small market, but this is not. This is M54 car. This is 03 525XI. Almost forgot what it was. So all the common misfire problems. This car is still somewhat taken apart, so the cowling's not in it, so it'll be a prime time to do this. The very first thing, I would say more of a hard to start, no start, and running extremely rough would be none other than our mass airflow sensor right here. And then traveling back will be the boot. These boots get rips in them. There's an upper boot and there's a lower boot that forks off to the cold start valve. All right. If that has any rips at all and it's getting unmetered air, it is going to run rough and have all kinds of issues. Like I said, also if the mass airflow sensor just simply goes bad, or if it's a Chinese one and is not functioning properly. Seems like about 150,000 miles, about when a factory one kind of takes a dump. Sometimes it might go 200, and it can also adversely affect your fuel mileage, but not be running rough. So there is that. The next thing, we'll talk about the Disa. Now the Disa, it can actually leak vacuum out of this little solenoid, out of this little round tube back there. That won't necessarily cause a misfire. A lot of guys think that this goes bad, it could be running rough, misfiring. That's actually not the case. When those go bad, they just won't advance. They won't open and close the flap. So you floor it, it'll be doggy from low RPM, and then it'll finally pick up at higher RPM. What that Disa does, it closes the flap to the runners, so you have better low-end torque and your high-end horsepower. So when that breaks, it takes away the low-end torque. Next up, I would say moving in here is the PCV. Here's a hard pipe that goes under the intake manifold, which joins this pipe right here, which goes down to a drain to the dipstick. The PCV actually sets up under the intake right in the middle. If that goes bad, that's probably one of the more common misfires we see. That'll be lean codes misfire, and that's all vacuum, like a vacuum diaphragm. So if anything ruptures in that or cracks or breaks, it'll be a solid vacuum leak. Also, it could back up oil in the PCV, CCV, and cause all kinds of issues. But moving up a little further over, we're gonna go to the fuel injectors. If the car's been sitting a long time, fuel injectors are a fairly common thing. And you'll hear that just rough misfire. You can actually take a screwdriver, a long screwdriver, put it up to when it's running. You can listen to each one individually. They should all be clicking normally. If they are not, then that is your issue. And we'll move over here. On these cars, this has a brand new valve cover on it. If the valve covers get cracked, since the PCV is actually sucking vacuum on the crankcase, you can have lean codes and possibly a misfire. Mainly though, the valve cover's cracked, you're gonna have oil running down in here and running on your manifold. It's gonna be stinking, all right? And we smell like burnt oil in the cabin. Obviously, the next thing is your ignition coil packs. I want to show you here why Philip has a big camera on us. I'm going to pull this up. Now, the coil packs, how these work are like this. So they slide out and unhook. The most common thing, if you look down to the top latch, let me try to get it. Well, this one won't quite do it. But see, there's like a little gap in there. If you close the latch, and there's a small, like right there. See a little gap? That'll misfire. It's got to be all the way in. That's probably the most common one. Spark plugs is the next one. Also rainwater in the spark plug valley, which these newer valve covers don't have such a big problem with it. If you have the old style bolt-in coil packs, those have a problem with, especially E39, rainwater running down, running into that and filling up that spark plug tube full of water and causing a misfire. We'll move on to the front of the engine, the Vanos unit. The Vanos unit lays right here. It's a timing advance unit, this aluminum piece here. That unit, it won't really cause a misfire per se. I have seen the solenoid get gummed up and get stuck, but that's pretty rare. Usually that's a non-change in oil situation there. But we always re-ring the Vanos unit so it advances the timing correctly. You could get a stumble, I guess, as you're flooring it, if it can't advance quick enough. Usually it just bogs on power. M54, the next one is, there is a cam sensor, intake cam sensor down behind here. You can barely see that. There's also a exhaust cam sensor over here. if any of those are Chinese or go bad, they get like a blister on the tip of them, and those will cause misfire, cause the car to die. About 150 K is when we see all these problems. Also, the crank sensors down under here on the side of the engine block, those 3 sensors control timing, control that stuff. If what'll happen, they'll get a blister on the end, it'll expand out, it'll get too close, it'll throw the timing off and cause horrific problems. We've seen cars like this, usually the crank sensor will go, the car will run fine until it gets to the operating temperature and just start bogging and cutting out and just no reason. Be very careful when you take that out so you don't strip the bolt. Also be very careful when you put that back in so you get it pushed all the way in and then put the bolt in. If it's not snapped all the way in, it'll also cause a misfire and all kinds of issues. Now, in rare cases, we've seen vacuum leaks from the secondary air, which this vacuum line's not on here, it's in the trunk still, we haven't got that far. Going to the back, there's a solenoid in the back, there's little vacuum caps back here in the back of the intake. Make sure all of those are in line. There again, that won't really cause a misfire, but it could cause a lean code. Also, make sure that this hose here is functioning correctly, is not broken. Rare occurrence on E46, very rare. The brake booster can go out and there could be a misfire on that. Other things that cause running bad misfires is fuel pump. That's under the back seat. And that's more of an off or on. Either it works or it doesn't. Now, what I have seen is the pump has like a sock on the bottom, a filter screen. It goes right into the pump, and then above that it has like a hard, like a plastic tube that goes up and into rubber. That plastic tube will get cracks and get broken. That'll cause low fuel pressure, cause it not to start right, cause all kinds of weird issues. I'm trying to think as we're going through what else could cause a misfire. That's pretty much about it. And rare, E46 doesn't really have ECU water problems, neither does E39. That was usually E60, E90 and up that had those issues. Obviously any kind of fuel injector harness problems, any kind of wiring harness has been chewed up by mice, has been melted. Anything like that very well could cause those issues. None of the secondary air system can cause misfire. They cause an error code. And as contrary belief, an oxygen sensor actually 9 times out of 10 will not cause a misfire. An oxygen sensor will just throw light, make it run in an open loop, and possibly hurt your fuel economy, things like that. And that's pretty much about it. M54 to me is a very simple engine anymore. We've done so many of them. We go to the bolt bin full of bolts, and I can point out what bolt goes to what in the whole engine. Very, very simple. One of these done up right will get, what, about 29 miles a gallon, I would say. If nothing's wrong, depends on what you've done to it, the exhaust. Also, one thing I want to talk about, one thing we're leaving out is the catalytic converter. Now, M54 cars have the catalytic converters are actually made onto the exhaust manifold. And you can see the exhaust manifold down there. We're going to fill up the chute down there. And we don't have the oxygen sensor wires clipped in the holders or nothing yet. But if those get stopped up enough, it'll cause loss of power. And it can cause a misfire if it gets bad enough. Misfire is pretty extreme. Usually you'll be able to smell it. You'll be able to know what's going on by then. And we'll do a video coming up shortly. We're going to scope a set of these catalytic converters and show you what it look like after a couple 100,000 miles and when you should actually change those. But that's going to be it, guys. Thanks for watching the video. Let me know if you want me to do this on any other cars. And we'll see you all very soon.